welcome everyone. We're at 6 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and start now. I think I'm on. Yes. So, welcome to the regular meeting. This is the Whitefish Community Development Board. It is Thursday, June 19th, and we're at 6 o'clock. So, we'll go ahead and begin with our call to order. And the first item on our agenda is appointing for this board a chair and a vice chair. Staff, I guess we're going to ask for your direction at this point. Typically, if there are only 4 members here, I know we have a quorum for the meeting, but should we hold a vote for those 2 positions with so few people present?
I mean, it's up to you guys. It's nice having a fuller board when you can ask everybody that's available, but
yeah, we'll postpone that until the next meeting and hopefully have a full board. All right, so that item has been moved to our next meeting in July. And would anyone like to make any other agenda changes for tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to approval from last month, May 15th minutes. Can I get a motion for that?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second?
Okay.
Well, you got plenty of seconds there.
It's been moved and seconded and thirded to approve the May 15th meeting by a show of hands. Everyone? All right. Motion passes. And now we'll move on to communications from the public. So this is a time, if you're not here to speak on something that's later in the agenda, then you can come up and share your thoughts with us. When you do come up, please let us know your name and your address, and then we'd love to hear your comments. So come to the mic at the front if you have comments for now. Seeing none, thank you all for being here. I'm guessing you're patiently waiting for a variance or zoning text amendment. So, do we have any unfinished business? I don't think of any or see any. All right. So we'll move on to public hearings now. And our first public hearing is a variance request. This is from Haley and Bevan Evans. And this is a request for a front yard setback. And we will hear from McDonald for this.
Good evening. So this is, as you said, a request from Haley and Bevan Evans for the property at 485 Armory Road. The property was annexed into the city in early 2024 and rezoned from Flathead County SAG 10 to Whitefish County Residential WCR. The applicants are proposing to construct a new single-family home with an attached garage and are requesting a 20-foot front setback and a 20% lot coverage, both of which align with the previous county zoning but not meet current city standards. The 1 acre lot is significantly below the 2.5 acre minimum required in the WCR zone. In addition, the site has physical constraints, including the high water table in the rear portion of the lot. This reduces the buildable space quite significantly. With the existing guest house remaining, there is insufficient area to construct a reasonably sized home without exceeding lot coverage limits. The variance would allow the applicants to proceed with a home that meets current residential needs while replacing outdated structures that no longer function well for the residential use. The proposed placement and scale of the home are consistent with the neighborhood properties, many of which remain under county zoning. Staff notified adjacent landowners via mailing April 22nd. Advisory email notices were sent April 29th, and a notice was published in the Daily Interlake April 30th. As of 5 p.m. today, no public comments have been received. Staff have found that this meets the requirements for a variance and represents the minimum variance necessary to allow a fair and reasonable use of the property. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Are they proposing to build on the same site as the existing home, basically?
Yes, generally
like
speaking, it's in the same vicinity.
Thank you. John?
At page 4, it says that Okay. Page 4, it says that 2,647 square feet is available to accommodate a single-family home under current regulations. So that's all there is on this lot that they could build on, correct?
Can you point me to
Page 4 of 7 at the top?
4 of 7? I apologize, my phone is struggling to keep up. Yes, please.
While she's looking, I'll just remind our board that sound is piping out into the world via YouTube. And so we've been requested to speak directly into the microphone, so maybe raise it to your face, point it towards your face. I'm getting direction from the back. Point it towards your face and speak directly into it. Thank you.
You are correct, John. What the billable area is 2,646.8 square feet after setbacks of current regulations in the high water table.
Okay. And as far as you know, is it feasible to build a house, single-family house, on that 2,647 square feet?
Yes, in the plans they approved that it would be reasonable to build in that area.
But as I
Or
understand
sorry, I apologize. That is for the variance. You know, I don't think it's reasonable, considering the neighborhood context. Usually we're looking at 5,000 square feet of the footprint for the homes out there. So it puts them at a hardship, you know, compared to their counterparts. Why I should.
Mhm. But I'm wondering if it's feasible to build a single-family house on that 2,647 feet. It seems like it would be. It'd be a small one.
You know, maybe I probably defer to the applicants to respond to that, to see what they explored with that square footage.
All right, any further questions for staff? All right, seeing none, we'll now open the public hearing. And so if the applicant is present, you can come to the mic, share your name, and we have your address, unless it's a representative, and then let us know what you'd like to. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is James Kotke. I'm the architect working with the Evans. You want my address, their address? Their address is 485 Armory Drive.
That's sufficient. Thank you.
Okay, that's where they live now. To go back to your original question, Mr. Heiberling, 2,646 square feet, that's including the garage. That's all buildable, and everything that's under roof. So a garage is 600 to 800 square feet. So 2,000 square feet minus any covered patios, minus anything, is minuscule. When the Evans purchased this property, it had a 20% lot coverage, and it had 20-foot setbacks all around. And when they went to go apply for a new septic permit, because they purchased this under the understanding that they wanted to develop it. The original buildings on the property are in horrific shape back from the 70s and poorly maintained. They bought this property knowing that they were going to develop it with these guidelines of 20% lot coverage and 20-foot setbacks all around. So when they went doing their due diligence, they needed to replace the septic system, and they were refused and asked to annex into the city, and that's where this new zoning came up. So all of this is not in their request at all. We've studied the home and the lot, and we will be building a house with about a 3,000 square foot footprint, but in addition to that, about an 800 square foot garage. So we're about, less than a 4,000 square foot footprint. So we're within reason within the neighborhood. And
So if they built a two-story home with a garage on the first story, they'd have at least 2,600 feet on the second story, right?
no, the 2,600 square feet is everything buildable. That's everything under roof. That's including a garage and covered patios. So you're going to have to build about a 1,500 square foot lower level, at least, if not even smaller. And given the circumstances of what their expectations were when they purchased this property, that's not what they're going to be doing. So
1,500 foot with 800 feet for garage, that'd be 700, and then another 1,500 upstairs, so that'd be maybe 2,200 square feet. They could.
But we're needing to build about a 3,800 square foot house, 4,000 square foot house to meet their needs as a growing family with kids and so forth. Now, they don't want a two-story box either. So architecturally, they want to have all their living on the main level and maybe a couple of bedrooms upstairs. And so I think a reasonable request in that. I'm going to bring up a point. I don't know if this is the appropriate time. We applied for this 2 months ago, and we've been waiting. We were here for the May 15th meeting when there were only four board members present, and we were made aware of that it would have to be a unanimous decision or we can't reapply for another 2 years. So I need to bring that point up again, and if that's the case, we need to know that, and I don't know if we're willing to take that gamble because the Evans have been on this property for a long time. They've been delayed already because of the annexation of the city. We've been needing to build a septic permit. We've been at this project for a couple of years now, and so we cannot have a delay. I don't know if that's the appropriate time to bring that up. Lauren, you didn't mention that to us at all. Last meeting we were here, you brought it up to us in advance. We were prepared for this. So we're really between a rock and a hard place. We really are.
We definitely remember you guys being here for the previous meeting and requesting to come back when we had a more full board and the potential to have your variance request approved. As far as us giving you direction on that before we take a full public hearing and have board discussion, I think that's a hard thing to do. I understand that you guys have been waiting and the annexation took a while. So thank you for this information. I'm not familiar with the board directing someone to either withdraw an application or go a separate route. Does staff have any direction on that? At this point, I think if I understand what you're saying should you withdraw if you don't have
And does that mean we're
full board?
reapplying again and we have to wait yet another month for a meeting? I don't know. With all due respect, did you have the opportunity to read the report before the meeting? Are there any specific questions that I can answer for you that would help in this? Or was that presentation all that you know about this variance?
We've had your information for 2 or 3 months
Yeah.
now, definitely.
Okay.
So thank you for that.
Okay,
And
I didn't know.
you guys have provided everything to us that we would request. So now it's just looking at those criteria and us discussing whether or not you meet those criteria for a variance, and that's something that we haven't discussed prior to this. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And Whitney, I would just say that, that the applicant does have the right to request to be postponed to the next meeting if they don't feel like there's enough members present, and that's what they did at the last meeting. They could certainly do that again and take the chance that maybe in July we'd have a full meeting. I know Mr. Bolin said he's gonna be late. I don't know when he's showing up, but that's an option, and you guys, in the past, boards have granted that.
So I can't at this point tell you how the board would vote on this, but I can extend to you the option of coming back next month, which I know is not ideal for someone who's looking to build. So that's your decision. If you guys would like to discuss for a moment, you can also listen to our discussion and then make that decision before we vote, I would believe. Is that correct? No?
Once you start the public hearing, then that's the process, so.
Okay, so we're into the public hearing now.
Well, I
The
mean,
applicant
you're talking
has
to the
spoken.
applicant, so I mean, but if you guys were deliberating, I mean, I don't think that's
Okay,
appropriate for them to withdraw up to that point.
so at this point now, this would be the time
Yeah, I
for
mean,
them
you can
to.
give them a couple minutes to talk about
Okay.
that and decide.
I
You have
would
the date?
suggest,
Do you have the date of the next meeting?
Yes, July 19th. Is it 19th or 17th? Sorry.
I
July
would
19th.
suggest that it be put off until there's a full board here.
We just can't.
July 17th.
Okay, that's what we will do. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your time, and I'm sorry for the delay. We understand you guys are here and present twice now, or more times, and really ready to go. So we'll do all of our due diligence and be ready to discuss this next month. Thank you. And if there's any other further information that the board wants to request, we'll get in touch with staff and request that before you come back again. All right, thank you.
I mean, I had signal, but I couldn't.
All right, so that moves us on to our second variance request for the evening. And knowing that you guys have the same courtesy extended to you, if you would like to, we could hear the staff report so that you make sure that everything you would like to be mentioned is included. You probably already have a copy of that. So let's go through the staff report on this one, and then as you come up as the applicant, you can decide whether you'd like to postpone to July or request now. All right? Okay, so we'll go ahead with the staff report for item WZV 25-05, and this is a request by Frank Lamb for a variance to develop a new single-family home. We'll go to McDonald. Thank you.
Alrighty, so this is for the property at 415 Columbia Avenue. The applicant is proposing to replace a deteriorated home on 2 substandard lots, non-conforming with single-family residence. The applicant seeks relief from side yard setback and lot coverage requirements in the WR2 zoning district. Currently, the existing house encroaches 7.5 feet into the northern side yard and even crossing the property line. The proposal would reduce the impact, maintaining a 5-foot, 10-inch setback on the north side and a 6-foot setback on the south, an improvement over the existing conditions overall. While not included in the original application, the new home will also exceed the 40% lot coverage limit, coming close to 46% once combined with the existing garage. Several surrounding properties were found to also exceed lot coverage thresholds, such as 403 and 409 Columbia Avenue, so this is not out of the norm. Staff notified adjacent landowners via mailing on May 29th. Advisory email notices were sent May 30th, and a notice was published in the Whitefish pilot on June 4th. Since the agenda was released, I have received 1 additional comment in support of the variance request, bringing the total to 5 comments received, 1 in opposition, 4 in support. Staff have found that the request generally meets all required variance criteria and represents the minimum necessary adjustment. Sorry about that. To make reasonable use of the property, the new home would reduce nonconformity, match the historic character of the neighborhood, and not adversely affect neighboring properties. Do you have any questions for me at this time?
Any questions for staff on this? All right, I don't see any questions for staff. So at this point, we'll open the public hearing. The applicant can come up and state your name, address, and let us know how you'd like to proceed.
Hello, my name is Frank Lamb. I live at 415 Columbia Avenue. I guess I would just like to start out by saying this is first time I have ever been a part of something like this. Never seen it. I'm on YouTube. That's a trip. But I guess after what just happened there, I'm a little kind of bewildered. I did read what the powers that be said that we were approved in their eyes as far as asking of the variance. But then in watching previously about we don't have enough staff here to get a yes or a no on our variance. So I guess the right thing to do would be to come back in another month. I guess my question is, like, are there any guarantees that I can present this and make this happen? I've lived at this property for over 20 years. This has been something that we've needed to do that I've been wanting to do for several years, that we're finally, this is our best option. When I read all the variants, I thought it was all pretty thorough. I can't say that I would add anything to it. I did briefly read the opposition on the when, and I just would like to state that it's not a mobile home that we're looking to put on the property. It's a modular home. It would come in two pieces and sit on a foundation. And I believe that you have a picture or two of what that home would look like. It's a nice place. It's not a mobile home. I guess where I need to go then is to ask for a delay and then come back in another month. I guess my question would be what happens a month from now, because I want this to happen for not only us, my family, but for the community, or for the, not the community, but for the block, for the people. I've been there a long time, got great neighbors, got young kids, got other kids and families that are anxious for us to come back. So with that being said, yeah, I guess I need direction. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Frank. So the same direction as for the last applicant. We likely will have a more full board next month. I'm not aware of anyone who plans to be out. We should have our member from city council who sits, and then our two other board members here. So then you would be presenting to a more full board. So if you would like to postpone, the same process that would happen tonight will happen next month. Sure, you can come back up and request.
I guess when I come back next month, and I'll do my best to be here. I'm a railroader, but if not me, my wife can come. But when we come next month, do I need all of you here in order to put out a vote? Is that how that works, or?
We have a quorum tonight, so we could vote.
It just takes 4 affirmative votes to pass a variance, and so you'd have to have a unanimous vote with only 4 members of the board here tonight.
Right. And I see 4 board members. And I'm sorry for my naivety.
No.
I read what the variance was. I read the person who was for the variance. I feel good about what we're requesting. What happens if I put it to the four of you and it doesn't go through, then do I have to do it all over again? Is that how that works, or?
So that's like the previous applicant, you would have to wait a period of time. Is that 2 years in the request? I don't know why he said 2 years. I've never
I'd have to look that up. I
understood
don't know.
that, but
The appeal process would be to Superior Court because these guys make their decision final.
so the chance that you're taking tonight is that all four unanimously, whereas next time with a more full board, you would have more to make up the four. So it's up to you if you would like a better chance percentage-wise of having
I guess my,
four.
I guess my question here then would be, I know that one gentleman had a question with them on size and all whatnot. I've come up, I haven't heard any of you guys have any questions about what it is that we're trying to do there. I don't.
Maybe I can say one thing. So because this is a quasi judicial matter, we haven't discussed it amongst ourselves. So we don't really know any more than you do what that would be.
Other than
that's
reading
helpful?
what
Yeah,
it is
so
that I
we're all
did,
kind of in
right,
the same boat in that regard.
right.
So I don't know if that
Right, and-
helps or not. That's about all I think we can offer.
Right, and understandable, and,
So it really is up to you.
At this moment, I don't have any questions for you as an applicant. After reading through your information and the recommendation from staff, does anyone else have a question? Okay,
you guys,
so Carrie, you can address this as well. Yes.
Best for us to delay because there's not a full board? That is some people who know us.
So I'm getting a request for you to speak into the mic. So the question is, it would take a unanimous decision here. The more people that we had here, the more likely you would make it to four. And as Scott just said, this is something that we don't discuss prior to. We're not allowed to. So we all have our own idea in mind, but I don't know what anyone else is thinking, and they don't know what I'm thinking. So it's, you could come back next month.
At
Yeah.
this point, it's in our best interest to delay for 1 month.
Percentage-wise.
We're not spending a lot of money to ask a question and be turned down, and then wait an X amount of time to spend that money again to ask the same question, because there's four of you here.
It would be a month to wait, and you wouldn't have any further paperwork. You would just come back next month with a more full board. So that's up to you. That's what the applicant before you did last month as well.
Whitefish in summer equals construction.
It does, yes.
Here we are.
Thank you. Yeah, so would you guys like to wait and be on the agenda next month?
I think we would.
Okay, we
Is
can-
it appropriate to speak openly and freely right now too about what we are doing and why we are asking?
Yes, you can.
To
Go
the
ahead.
four of you, who I think most of you know us, and
So
we
just
are,
step over a little bit to that mic and
we're
then speak.
asking because we are community members and people who have lived our lives in Whitefish, and we are asking for this variance so we can continue to raise our family here and do what we do, which is railroading and education. So we're asking for, I think, something very small and very minuscule in the planning of Whitefish right now. And I hope you just would consider us in your favor, as we're people you want in your community.
Right. Thank you, Carrie and Frank. And we will put you on the agenda for next month and rally to have more board members here for multiple reasons. So thank you, guys. All right.
And just for your information, there's not a time limit on reapplying, but it says a request may only be reheard if there's been a manifest error affecting the board's decision or it appears that a substantial change in facts, evidence, or conditions has occurred.
So something would have to transpire or change with them to come back and reapply under the same conditions. They can't just continue to come back and hope for a more favorable condition.
As far as
Something
if
has
you,
to
if you
change.
were to vote for denial, or three voted to approve it and one voted to oppose it, that would still not pass, so yep. So it's
Okay.
probably in their best interest to try to come back when there's a full board, and hopefully there will be. We don't have any control over that.
All right, thank you, guys.
So Dave, I just have a question about that standard you read. So you said reheard. So would that mean we have completed a public hearing, taken a vote, and then someone moves for like reconsideration, or
I mean, the way it reads in that, I think you'd have to, if they were gonna reapply,
reapply?
yeah, because they, did not get a
All right.
favorable vote.
Okay,
But in order to reapply, some circumstance has to change, or that they show that there was some, reason why there was an,
but
an
so
error.
there's no, it's not just a time limit, it's actually that standard that would
I mean,
apply?
yeah, I mean, you guys are the final decision on that, and the next is for them to have to go to court and hire an attorney and spend a bunch of money to try to
Right.
overturn your decision that way, which puts a lot of pressure on, an
Sure.
applicant, because, the variance fee is fairly expensive, and, all the stuff that goes into that, and so there has a lot riding on that for them, so it certainly makes sense, in their shoes, to hope that there's more, more people here, and it's kind of unfortunate that 2 months in a row we haven't been able to field a full board, and this stuff will just keep stacking up, and I'm not sure what else we have on the agenda for the next couple months, but the agenda's gonna get bigger and bigger, so.
All right. Thank
What-
you. Go ahead, Scott.
I was
Sorry.
just saying, I certainly agree with everything you said.
I do too. And I'm happy that they're both willing to come back. You could see they were disappointed, but hopefully we'll have more people here. So we'll move along to our recommendation item. That's WZTA 25-02. And this is a request for zoning text amendment. And Dave Taylor will present that to us. Go ahead.
Yeah, good evening again. So, a couple months ago, we brought up to the city council, just that there was just some things that we could probably improve on our formula retail code. We've been getting a lot of requests from different businesses that want to locate in the downtown where we have a restriction on formula retail. And so, in discussing that with the council and with the city attorney, we came back with some minor changes to the code to sort of tighten that section up. So what we're proposing is to revise the definition of formula retail business, and then we're adding a whole new section in our special provisions that specifically has development standards for formula retail businesses, that also provides a more robust legal basis for that. And so if we were ever to be challenged by a formula business for denying them to be in our downtown, that we have some things that we can draw on in there that provide us some background and relate it to our growth policy. Where in the past we just had a definition of that and no other standards, and it didn't provide a basis for why in our code. So that new section under 11.344, should this be adopted, it'll provide specific development standards for formula businesses. Again, it mentions an intent section. It outlines why formula businesses are restricted, how those restrictions tie into the city's growth policy, because it protects the downtown and other commercial areas and supports unique local businesses. It also would broaden the definition of formula businesses to include bars and lounges, check cashing outlets or payday loan franchises, equipment and gear rentals, gyms and fitness studios, non-automobile sales and rentals, which include like scooters and e-bikes, personal services, including salons, restaurants, which are already in there, and then retail sales with the exception of fuel sales, and then pharmacies. And then there's some exemptions in there which would exempt financial services such as banks, because almost every bank is part of a branch who would meet that formula retail. Investment firms, real estate firms, legal assistance, insurance, healthcare, title agencies, and similar professional services would all be exempt from that formula restriction. And then it adds an additional requirement which would be really only apply to the WB2 zone, which is where we allow all our formula businesses. That an economic impact study would be required for any formula retail or hotel that's over 10,000 square feet. And then there's also a new section that's added in there that references our architectural review standards, which are already in place, that require that any formula business not use traditional building designs and color schemes when they do come in. So, for instance, when McDonald's remodeled, we required them to not look like any other McDonald's. And then as far as the definition under 11.9.2, we are revising that. We changed the term from formula retail to formula business because that's a broader term. It's more than just retail. And then we're reducing the number of similar businesses to be considered a formula. Currently you have to have 12 businesses in different locations. We're reducing that to 10. That's a standard that's seen a lot elsewhere in the country for the few places that do restrict these things. And then under the standardized items to be considered a formula business, right now there's 2 of the things that they have to meet, similar merchandise, similar color schemes. We reduced that to 1, so it should tighten it up even more. And then we're adding menu items as well to the list, so it's not just merchandise, so it includes things like restaurants with similar menus and serving similar food. And then we had just broadened a little bit under the standardized logo and business lane. Right now it says trademark or service mark. And if somebody has a business that maybe isn't trademarked, we wanted to cover that. So includes a standardized logo or business name. And then we had a couple of minor changes under our WB1 and WB3 sections. In WB3 zone, formula businesses are completely restricted. In the WB1 zone, they require a conditional use permit. So just so you know that. And then down in the WB2 zone, as I mentioned, we're not changing anything in that. That is where we have all of our formula businesses, including Napa, Dairy Queen, Budget Rent-A-Car, Super One, Safeway, Walgreens, McDonald's, the Marriott, Ace Hardware, Town Pump, et cetera, et cetera. And that's where we, determine as a city where those types of businesses should go. So in general, I can go into any more specifics that you want to about the text. That is available on pages 2 and 3 of the staff report. Again, under our growth policy, when that was developed in 2007, there was a finding or a goal in there that research regulatory amendments to discourage and prohibit formula retail business from locating in the downtown area. We did implement that. We did create back, several years back, we did create the code that did prohibit formula business downtown. All the other findings support a recommendation for approval, and staff does recommend approval of this zoning text amendment.
All right, thank you, Dave. Any questions for staff from the board?
I guess I've got one. So the formula retail definition, all of that currently regulates what are collectively referred to as box stores, right?
There's a lot of different types of businesses. Box stores are one type of formula retail. We have, we had Lululemon that wanted to come downtown. I had to tell them no. A lot of the women that I knew were very angry with me, but.
So it would be any franchise type business?
That has, 10 or more stores elsewhere.
Okay.
Mackenzie River Pizza, they're now a franchise. When they went in, that was the first one. So they weren't a franchise. They're allowed to remain because they were grandfathered in. That's an example.
Okay. So does this then in any way expand the formula retail, formula, what are we calling it? Formula business. In any zones, other outside beyond what
Nope,
currently
it doesn't change the restrictions on things. It just tightens the code language up, and it tightened up the definition so that we've had businesses that have multiple locations, but they talked about, well, we'll just change the name of the business in Whitefish, but keep them so that we don't meet that standard. But and so we're trying to avoid loopholes that someone could get around that have multiple businesses elsewhere with the same types of things in order to maintain the integrity of downtown Whitefish as being a unique local businesses is what the intent is.
So adding this new definition doesn't in any way expand an opportunity for a formula business to?
It does not. I mean, if you look at the different zoning districts, like for instance, the WB3, all we're changing in there is broadening it, say, restaurants, and then we reference the definition of formula retail. Well, we're changing that to be called formula business, and so we're modifying that. It's really, that's the only changes we're making, because in the past we called it formula retail. But, you know, we're changing the name of it to formula business. And then, you know, of course, we're also adding hotels in there that in the past were not regulated in the downtown. And so in that sense, we're tightening it up. We do allow hotels and motels. They used to be a use by right, now they're a conditional use. We're adding something in there that only non-formula hotels would be able to be in the downtown. However, they are allowed in the B2. It's still a conditional use permit process for those.
So I get to kind of clarify, and it's just because I'm not so familiar with the zoning code as I should be, but so adding this new definition doesn't then make it a potential use in any zoning area that is not included in these
We're not
three.
changing where formula businesses are allowed with this. We're just tightening up the definition.
All right.
But we did add hotels to that, and that's really the only main change.
So you changed hotels from a conditional use, or to a conditional use?
Oh, they already are a conditional use.
I'm sorry, you changed it from of right to conditional use? I thought I
Hotels
heard
are
you say that.
we're not changing whether hotels are a conditional use or not, but we are restricting formula hotels from the downtown.
Okay. All right. I think that's all the question I have.
Any further questions from staff? Or for staff? All right. I guess we'll go ahead and ask for a motion at this point.
Public hearing.
But public hearing. Wendy, anything? Thumbs up. All right, so we have opened and now we're closing the public hearing. So we'll go ahead and ask for a motion and then have discussion if need be. All right,
I move to disapprove the zoning text amendment.
I'll second for purposes of discussion.
okay, so it has been moved and seconded that we disapprove the zoning text amendment. John, would you like to speak to your motion?
Okay. At the May growth policy meeting, we voted to prohibit formula retail and to prohibit box stores. So I think it would be quite inconsistent with that for us to approve and regulate them by approving this text amendment. So we acted following the visioning session results, and Alan reported on June 2nd to the City Council that the visioning was nearly unanimous against box stores and formula retail. So that was a driving force in what we did. So if we attempt to regulate box stores and formula retail, then that's inconsistent with our vote to prohibit. So I think we should just not touch it and vote to deny. Secondly, on the first page of the handout, under the definition, about 2/3 of the way down, it says it broadens the definition of formula businesses to include the following. So that looks like an expansion to me, and I think likewise an expansion of formula retail or box stores would be inconsistent with our vote to prohibit them at the May growth policy meeting.
So I will respond to that with my understanding after reading this and then listening to the presentation from staff. this to me does tighten, and broadening a definition is part of what is tightening, because making more stores other than retail, so any business, restaurants, hotels, business that aren't retail, it's my understanding, and you may disagree or have a different idea, but it's my understanding that the gap between when our growth policy decisions will come into effect, because now we're still living under the 2007 growth policy. So we want to be as tight and concise in our decisions on this board with what we want in the future in that gap before the growth policy that we're enacting goes into play. So from my perspective, this does that. I'm not incredibly excited that formula business as it's defined is possible in B1. So that's like north of the viaduct, is that correct? By conditional use.
Yeah, currently, that's the way it is right now. We're
And
not
it is
changing
right
that.
now.
But yeah, if you were to do a formula business there, a great example of how this is tightening it up, Black Tie Ski Rentals, they are a formula service. They do not fall under our formula retail. Therefore, we could not restrict them. We had to allow them in our downtown. They used to be at the old Kentucky Fried Chicken, Naked Noodle location. They moved into the B1. Did not require a conditional use permit there because it's considered a service, not a retail business, because they deliver skis. This new definition would include them because we're adding formula service and rentals. We're tightening it up to include check cashing outlets. Right now, financial services are allowed. A payday loan store could open up on Central Avenue. So this tightens up our definition of formula retail by including more types of formula businesses. Gold's Gym, that would not be allowed downtown, could be out in the B2. Lots of other types of things. So by broadening it, we're tightening it because we're including more things that could be considered formula retail. That way we'd be able to restrict them better in the downtown.
Thank you. So from my perspective, in this interim time before our growth policy goes into effect, if we don't amend the text that's there now, then we're open to more formula business during that time. From my perspective, it doesn't undermine what we're doing with the growth policy. It tightens it up before the growth policy goes into effect. So that's my thinking on this. So I'm for this zoning text amendment for different reasons. And if you want to describe to me where I may be thinking differently from you, then I think it's that time period that we're not coming together on. I want us to not be open to what we are open to now before what we really want in the growth policy, what the community really wants in the growth policy comes into effect.
So when I read this, I was confused. And I don't think it's by the drafting or anything else. It was just I wasn't really clear on understanding what really this is targeted at and why now, when we just had a discussion about this in our planning process. It doesn't sound to me like it's some trying to, bake in formula business into the zoning ordinance as a way of trying to continue that use on past the time when we get a growth policy approved. And so that was a concern of mine. I mean, I do understand, I guess, now that what we're doing is basically we're constricting the size of the footprint that formula business could apply for a conditional use from all of these zones to just that area along the 93 South corridor, basically. Is that right?
And again, this is where the code is right now. Right now, it's a conditional use permit to have any formula retail business in the B1 zone, north of the viaduct. They're completely restricted in the B3 downtown, and a lot of them are just a use by right out in the B2 zone. The council did change a couple things like auto parts stores and hotels and convenience stores to be conditional uses. But other than those things, which are conditional uses, whether they're formula retail or not, would have to go through that process. But this is tightening up things. I mean, there's been concern about like scooter rental places operating in the downtown. Well, that's a service. It's not, you know, all retail sales and services are allowed downtown. That would not fall under retail. With this amendment, we'd be able to restrict formula scooter rental companies from operating downtown. If it's not a Formula One, if it's a local business, then they may be able to do that, but there's been some pressure to do that type of stuff. So based on the direction that I got from council, yeah, we're tightening up, we're broadening the types of businesses that we can restrict downtown, because that's where the main restriction is, and then including other types of businesses in the B1 that we would also restrict, or at least require them to go through a conditional use permit process. But in no way is this opening it up for more types of formula businesses.
So, hypothetical example, because I don't know any of the facts about this, and if there are facts, point it out to me and I'll withdraw it, but Army Navy is for sale. I don't know if it's sold, but that's out in that corridor area. So what would happen with this if someone came in now with, you know, a formula business?
Well, there's, you know, general retail is not permitted in the B2, so it'd have to be something that falls under the list of allowed uses in the WB2 zone. If it did fall under the permitted uses and it was a formula retail, currently they're allowed in that zone. If it's a type of business that's restricted, it would not be allowed out there at Army Navy. But that's the zone that, you know, the past councils have determined that those things should go, and there's a lot of formula businesses already there. But they're all business that are permitted. Army Navy is a permitted use.
But not a Formula One, right?
But they're not, well, I mean, I don't know how many of those there are. I think there's just a couple locally, but you know, Safeway, formula business, Walgreens, formula business. There's lots of them out there. I mean, formula restaurants, Town Pump, you know, Napa, Ace Hardware, that's a formula business. But hardware stores are allowed. And so if another hardware store wanted to come in that was a Formula One, they'd be allowed to go in there.
So this wouldn't prevent more formula business from being instructed in this gap period in that zone?
Not in that zone, because that is the zone where we have determined as a community where those types of businesses should go. But this is adding, if it's over a 10,000 square foot formula business, that it would be required to do an economic impact study to see how it would impact other businesses downtown or around this community. And so that's something we are adding.
Okay, John?
All right, John?
Okay, I have to admit to some confusion along with Whitney and Scott. I thought broadening the definition of formula businesses meant broadening the kinds of formula businesses that would be allowed, but David said, no, it doesn't mean that. And right, it broadens the definition of what can be regulated.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, so given that, I withdraw my motion.
This is why we discuss.
I'd like to make a motion to approve just a second. Come on. WZTA 25-02 as presented by staff.
I'll second that.
All right, motion's been made and seconded, and we have discussed, so let's have a vote for the motion to approve the text amendment.
Aye.
All right, all in favor, unanimously passes. Thank you, Dave, for your work on this.
And thanks for the explanation. That was very helpful.
I was going to say, business that you don't even know is a formula business. What if they drop about 200 lines?
All right, so that
Yeah, no.
will wrap up our agenda items this evening.
You know, I think.
And now we'll move on to good and welfare. So the first is matters from the board. Any matters from the board? This lists a letter as matters from the board, but that's not a matter from the board. So That's a place to put
In
it.
the council, the letters are
Yeah.
at the end of the meeting. We just did it
Okay.
like that.
That works,
So if
yeah.
you guys want to talk about it, you can. If you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to talk about it.
I would like to talk about it a little bit. First of all, I'm sorry Giuseppe's not here. I like to thank him for this letter. I think it raises some issues that have been the topic of discussion. And so when I read the letter, the first thing I did was going back to look at the sources that he references in support of his concerns. And he mentioned this Montana Planning Board Member Handbook. That got me Googling it. So I went out, and it was a 2020 document. And then as I started looking into where that was, I started wondering why I didn't know what this was. Then I found a growth policy handbook for planning board members out there from the same era. I asked about that last night. Alan said that it was probably outdated. He said that he could post it, but he wouldn't put much reliance in it because it was all prior to MLUPA. I found some value in that growth policy handbook, and I certainly see some value in this Montana Planning Board Member Handbook. I saw plenty of things in there that I'd never really known or understood before. For example, one, when the chairman is opening a public hearing on a new variance matter, the handbook suggests that what we do first is, for the record, clarify that the public notice was properly published. I think that's a good idea. And it's full of all kinds of useful little hints like that. And this was my concern when I first came on the board, that I was new to this. I mean, I'm not new to the area of law, but I was certainly new to the governing aspect of land use regulation. And so I went in and asked Angie right away if we could arrange for some board training. I think I repeated that request once or twice. We had a MLUPA training scheduled for 2 months ago, was it, or last month? And then I don't recall the reason, but it was probably a good one that was continued. It might have been lack of board attendance. Was that?
Yeah, that was part of it, lack of board attendance. Yeah, and then the meeting was basically canceled. And
so in thinking about all of this, right, for me, I think a number of the challenges that we've encountered as a board working with staff and with council can be traced back to what kind of training this board has had. And I see the Department of Commerce offers a vast array of resources in this regard, not only for boards that have a planning staff, but probably more importantly for those that don't. And so I'm genuinely grateful to Giuseppe for bringing this up, because in the planning board member handbook, I did read, in a big, the head of a section, the planning board does not write the growth policy, right? In the other manual, it says the planning board prepares the growth policy. Both are true, right? Alan's writing the growth policy. We're in charge of preparing it, and I think we've been struggling through trying to identify what those two terms mean. And I think we made a lot of progress last night, and I want to thank Dave and Angie both, and our Public Works Director as well, and Alan, for taking the time to sit down and talk through some things. And I really felt like that was a positive, productive thing, which again kind of highlights the fact that I feel unqualified or underqualified as a board member because I don't feel like I'm properly trained.
You're gonna get training in a couple of minutes as soon as we end this meeting.
What does that mean?
New board training
Oh,
tonight.
is that correct?
That's correct. It's on the agenda. Wendy's
I
waiting
did
for
not
it.
see it. All right.
We're moving
Well,
to 10 again.
I'll stop there. Thank you.
All right, any other response or general comments from the board at this point?
Well, I'll briefly say that I looked at the statute that Giuseppe was citing, and it says the planning board shall prepare a growth policy. So the statute would be dominant if there's any inconsistency with the statute. And this did come up June 2nd at the city council work session. Giuseppe asked if there was a breach of law, and Steve asked if the Heart of Whitefish wholesale rewrite was legal. And Angie said that if it were properly noticed, then it is legal. So I think we're interpreting the word prepare in the statute, and prepare to me means that we do at least some of the writing, and that's what we're doing. I don't know if I have anything more to offer than that.
Yeah, I appreciate Giuseppe's interest as a citizen and as a council member, and he's been always very forthcoming, whether it's coming to the meetings here to give us his feedback or in a different forum, letting us know. And I think that's what public comment and public governing, small town governing is all about. So I appreciate that. At the same time, since he's not part of this board and hasn't probably been checking everything that comes through to us, I understand that he and some community members had concerns about our adoption of the draft that we chose to adopt 4-2. And we will be as transparent as we can be. It's nice to have reassurance from our legal team that we haven't broken any laws. We will continue to try our best to stay within the bounds of all laws and regulations. That's our goal, to keep the process moving, but also be thorough while we, in essence, prepare this with staff leading. So thank you, Giuseppe, if you're listening now or in the future to YouTube, and we welcome your comments and your feedback. That is my comment on that letter. I took it as well as I think anyone can take, hearing that perhaps they have not tried their best or done something illegal. So it's been received.
Well, I'll just voice the opinion that it's not on my shoulders. I didn't vote for the inclusion of the Heart of Whitefish.
All right, thank you, Toby. Now we know a second time, third time. All right, any matters from staff before we move to training? Nope. All right, is everyone here available for the July 17th meeting?
I did have a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'd like to move to change work session to growth policy meeting. There was a complaint that work sessions are not traditionally where decisions are made, and from time to time we do make decisions on the growth policy. So I can see how that could be misleading to someone, and I think it's clearer, more correct to call it a growth policy meeting.
I'll second that, because I think that we've had this motion and second before. It hasn't been reflected in the heading of our meeting for growth policy, work group or work session. I'm taking it as it's a meeting. We're making motions. Last night was a little less formal, just because we had two sort of expert community members there and Craig Bergman, so we were back and forth quite a bit.
That's the difference. So, you know, if it's a work session, you have the ability to communicate and interact back and forth with the audience, where if it's run as a meeting, I mean, you really, you know, I mean, you can recognize people, but it's much more formal.
So,
Can I suggest that we then rename it Growth Policy Workshop?
You know, I see both sides of it, you guys. I like the work session format, and I think council does too, because you can go back and forth. I tend to agree if you guys are making motions, and, you know, we've gotten in trouble in the past. We've actually gotten sued over having what's called work groups. So, you know, Whitney, I understand your perspective that if you want it, but just so you guys, so you guys know, you will run it pretty much exactly like this meeting. But again, I appreciate your concern, and I do think that it would be appropriate to formalize it, have minutes, because I am seeing, although they're not final decisions, decisions are still being made. So, my 2 cents.
And if we have the growth policy meeting in the smaller room, we basically have the same opportunity. We're all close together, and a discussion can happen if the board, the chairman permits it.
yeah, so motion's been made and seconded. We've gotten legal advice. So let's take a vote to change, for the motion to change the work policy session to the growth policy meeting. All right, all in favor say aye or raise your
Aye.
hand. Okay, so it passes unanimously. We shall have meetings. All right.
I have another motion.
All right, John, go ahead.
This is a direction to the board, to the staff, and in the form of a suggestion that the planning staff put a second person on the growth policy project.
You mean to assist Alan?
Yes.
Okay.
So your motion
That's the
is
motion.
the suggestion to, you
Yeah.
move to
Give direction
suggest,
to
yes.
staff or
All right,
whatever you-
so I will second that, and then I would like us to discuss further on this, so.
Okay, I'm
if you'd like.
emphasizing that it's a suggestion. We're not telling the staff what to do. But Alan acknowledged on June 2nd before the city council that if he has to do this, he doesn't think he can make it by the deadline. And so, and I realize there may be a consultant coming in the picture, but we don't know how many months that'll be. So I think it would be really good to have a second person put on the project. I have no idea what the structure of work may be, and it's up to the staff whether they do this, obviously. But I think it's a good suggestion.
I think it's probably a matter of economics and availability. Does the city have a spare person to put on it, whether it be full-time or part-time?
I'll let Dave speak to his staff, but I would caution you. I understand it's a suggestion. I will tell you that even city council cannot direct staff. Dana directs staff. So while you can make this suggestion, whether or not that is feasible really would be up to Dana and Dave, and as work allows. Our planning staff is extremely busy, not only Alan, but all of these folks too. So again, I'd caution you about even anything that looks like you're directing staff, because we caution even city council that you are not allowed to direct staff.
So based on that, I would suggest that any member of the Community Development Board that feels that Alan needs some help, write a personal letter yourself to
No,
Dana.
I just want to chime in a little bit. You know, Alan is spearheading this, but other staff members have been assisting. You know, Wendy, Lauren, me, Tammy have all assisted with drafting certain parts of different chapters of that to help him out, but that is his job, is to compile the growth policy. We all have other duties. We help him as we can. And we are putting out an RFP for a consultant to work on the land use portion of it. And so, you know, we are adding additional resources towards that in order to try to get this accomplished by the deadlines that we face, which is going to be a difficult task.
Yeah, I suspect that there's more that goes on behind the scenes that we don't know about.
Yeah, and the more, you know, the more the stuff that kind of churns with this board, and the work sessions are now meetings, the longer it takes stuff to get done, because we have to keep going back and redoing things. And so just beware that we still have a lot of stuff to go through.
So we will nicely change that, I suppose, instead of a motion to a hope that Alan will have all of the help that he needs, and we will do the best that we can to keep things coming in a timely fashion, and then also in the meetings we'll continue to be prepared and make it through as quickly as possible within the bounds of what we can do. All right. So that clears up matters from board, matters from staff.
I have another motion.
Okay, so we're jumping back into, because now we were on the poll members for the next meeting. So we will entertain this, and then after that, I suppose we'll move into training. But
That's all?
okay, so John, go ahead with your next comment.
Okay, this is also a hope. But I move to clarify that if necessary, the Citizens or Community Development Board will hold extra meetings to accommodate review of growth policy matters.
So I'm quite sure that we did discuss that maybe 2 months ago, adding an extra meeting as needed. I have a gnat that is all over me right now. And we said that we would make a motion as necessary to hold an extra meeting. And at that, we discussed we would have the Wednesday meeting for the growth policy meeting, and then the Thursday meeting for this. It's my understanding now that we might have a lull in the growth policy for the next month or two, so economic development or some other chapter can sneak into those
Yeah, I mean,
as notice is available to the public.
that's correct.
So-
I mean, yeah, as needed, and if it gets to a point where we start getting real close to a deadline and we got a lot of stuff to get through, we may be adding multiple meetings. Right now, just because Alan took a backtrack to work on the economic development as well as the water quality, he hasn't been able to move forward on the public facilities and the transportation section, so that's why there's going to be a delay on those.
So as we need to add meetings, definitely, I hope that you guys would encourage us as staff to add a meeting, and then we'll be looking to add meetings and making a motion. If it's helpful, I don't know what's helpful to Alan, if adding another meeting to wrap up economic development and go through line by line like City Council has requested, or if it's more helpful to him to continue working on what he needs to and then fill in that regular Wednesday spot with that.
Yeah, when we come to a lull, I think, in a gap, I mean, we can readdress that one. But right now, yeah, I mean, we got the momentum going while we're working on the public facilities, that we need to get that taken care of because it's all fresh in our minds.
All right, so now we will poll who will be here in July. Everyone? Okay, great. All right, and I guess that's it. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to
Training?
adjourn.
All right, seconded. Thank you, guys.